The following program contains adult themes. Some scenes may be too intense for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. How can two ordinary boys turn into killers to satisfy a god of the occult? What strange bond can push them to murder?
I feel personally that Jason Rose was surely a serial killer waiting to happen. He just got caught too soon.
Rose had similarities to Charles Manson, and Jones was a typical Manson-like follower.
Jason told me that now we'll be friends till death, and I'll do anything for you. Well, I didn't realize that anything to him was getting me put in here.
This is an actual police videotape of two boys, Jason Rose and Johnny Ray Jones, demonstrating on a life-size dummy at the actual site of the murder exactly how they killed a teenage girl.
What are you saying now?
You're gonna wish you hadn't done that, bitch.
Okay.
And they tell their bizarre story with an almost complete lack of remorse.
2,
What are you saying about it?
3. Dead now.
There are times when two people acting together, encouraging, influencing, manipulating each other, can do dreadful things that individually would be unthinkable. I'm Teresa Saldana, and this is Confessions of Crime. Tonight, we will try to get inside the minds of two boys who together became cold-blooded killers. Johnny Jones and Jason Rose fed off each other's psyches. Increasingly, they became outcasts in their own private world and fueled their friendship with a belief in the occult. Using their vivid and harrowing confession tapes and an exclusive interview with Johnny Jones in prison, we'll paint a portrait of how two seemingly normal boys can descend into murder. Johnny Jones and Jason Rose lived in Eugene, Oregon. Each was the product of a broken home. They both spent time at the Eugene Mall, just hanging out, and it was almost inevitable they would cross paths. 20-year-old Jason Rose had been a problem teenager with a charming, charismatic personality, but behind his attractive facade, there was anger and violence.
Jason, to my knowledge, did not have a lot of close friends. He had people that he would associate with for periods of time and would break up and associate with others. A lot of that was due to the fact that he'd get into fights with people.
Have you ever run up against somebody that you didn't want to turn your back on? You always wanted to walk facing them? That's the impression that I got from being around Jason.
Jason Rose had been a social deviant for many years, but he had a certain charisma about him that attracted some of the other deviants to him, or other the lost kids or the mall rat type of kids.
The teenager, 17-year-old Johnny Ray Jones, was a clever, likable boy who had led a lonely but quiet life. He was an ideal candidate for the role of Jason Rose's follower.
Johnny was the type of kid that probably didn't have a lot of friends as a young man and was looking for somebody that he could follow in. Unfortunately for Johnny, that person became Jason Rose.
Jones was not an antisocial person. He was more of a drifter and a follower who kind of went along with things. He wanted to be liked, and he wanted to have friends, and he wanted to have somebody that respected him, and unfortunately he had to settle for Jason.
He didn't like me going anywhere without him around. He liked always being there, make sure I didn't talk to anybody he didn't want me to talk to, or say anything that he didn't want me to say. And most other people saw that except for me.
The inward-looking friendship between Jason and Johnny became focused on their increasing obsession with the occult. They decided to worship Ariok, a character from the game Dungeons and Dragons. Arya was the god of chaos, evil, and death. Jones and Rose even believed they had the power to turn themselves and other people into vampires.
Rose and Jones were into vampirism, particularly Rose. He had several girlfriends that participated in this behavior with him and talked about it.
Jason had me believe that I was turning into a vampire. But I couldn't explain why I could still stay out in the sun or anything else, like see myself in a mirror. And Jason said, well, those are all just fairy tales about vampires. They can actually see themselves and they can be out in the sun. I did believe for a while that I was, because it was believing that I could be something or somebody that I wasn't.
Jason was into abducting cats, for an example, in one particular case where he hung the cat up. After he cut its eyes out, he thrust his knife through the cat. Chickens, rabbits. One occasion, in the presence of a female acquaintance of his, he drank what he proclaimed to be a water glass full of goat's blood.
Some of the pets around the neighborhood kept disappearing, and Jason was usually involved in the disappearance. And once again, I think that's just a manifestation of power. He had the power to end a life. So he did.
One incident where there was a young woman who was expecting a baby, and Jason had a pretty close relationship with her and tried to convince her that he should take the baby, and this baby should be sacrificed to the devil. I think there had been some comments she had made that he was going to try to extract the baby himself, and she became very fearful of that.
This potent blend of alienated teenagers and a belief in the evil power of the occult was a recipe for murder. Who would they choose as their sacrificial victim? Stay with us. Johnny Jones and Jason Rose were immersed in the occult. But how did their strange beliefs become so strong that they could commit murder? How did they make the leap into violence and death? It appears that Jason, as usual, took the first steps toward the ultimate evil, a human sacrifice.
He picked up bits and pieces from the Satanic Bible and some of the teachings there. Eventually became very interested in human sacrifice and told many witnesses that was what he was very interested in. He wanted to see what it would feel like to kill someone, to have a human sacrifice.
The two of them had tried to kidnap a young woman off a mall just a short time before, and I believe that woman was really the planned victim of what was the next state in their development, and to see if, in fact, the killing of a human was as much fun as the killing of animals.
The belief system with many of these aspects of Satanism is that by offering life to one of the entities or to Satan, that they achieve that life power for themselves.
They had to have a human sacrifice, and it didn't make any difference who. And I was also brought to my attention that there was a hit list of both John and Jason's friends or associates from the mall that they were going to kill.
In their system of beliefs, rune stones, an ancient alphabet of symbols carved into little rocks, had an essential importance. Johnny and Jason believed that when they killed, the stones, with their strange druid symbols, would signal the time, the place, and the victim. Unknown to her, 19-year-old Melissa Meyer was to be the stone's choice. Melissa had been sent by her parents in Seattle to live in the quieter atmosphere of Eugene.
She was a similar kid. She was searching for her direction in life. Her parents and family thought that this would be a good community for her to live in because they felt it was a smaller community than Seattle, where she was having some trouble.
It happened her brother was down here working on his master's degree, and it seemed like a good way that they could share an apartment and she could have a fresh start away from any hometown influences, and so that was how she got to Eugene.
Melissa was a very pretty girl, and when she was around me, she was around us. She was very polite. She wasn't a smart aleck. She showed manners and well behaved.
John was the one I have gathered since, and I'm convinced of, was the one who was her friend, and the one that she trusted. They really picked her up off the mall, and she went along with them. Jason Rose had a quote in one of his trial things that it was easy to kill somebody who you knew slightly because they would trust you.
Melissa did trust me a lot. When she needed help or a friend to talk to, she came to me instead of a lot of the other people she could have went to.
Unaware of what fate and the occult had in store for her, Melissa made friends with Johnny and Jason. Then one night, Jason and the runestones said she must die. Stay with us. The night of the murder started innocently enough. Jones and Rose walked to the mall to meet Melissa. They took her back to their campsite in the woods. Even now, she had not been definitely selected as the human sacrifice, but her young life was hanging in the balance.
We just started joking around with each other and stuff. And by the time dark came, Jay went out, grabbed one of his black magic books, went out, lit 2 candles, and started doing a spell.
They took the rune stones, they had them with them, and they rolled them out there. And Rose did this with Jones present, and Rose and Jones read them, and Rose exclaimed, "The runes say she must die, and the runes don't lie." And Jones agreed with that.
John goes, should we kill her now? And I said, not yet.
Okay, but you said...
But I want the bitch dead as of now.
Okay. Okay.
The runes said so, and we don't disobey the runes.
The evening dragged on, with Melissa totally unaware of what horrors were in store for her. Jason knew she was going to die. Johnny also knew, but he could have stopped the sacrifice.
You say how you wanted to kill her?
Yeah, he did.
How?
He said that he wanted me to take her for a walk. And I had ideas about taking her home.
Here's a young man who was 17 years of age and obviously was of an age of reason. He could have stopped this at any point. There were numerous times he could have stepped in and said, Jason, this is going too far. He did not.
Immediately preceding the physical aggression against her, she became aware of what their intentions were. She overheard some whispering, and she started pleading for her life, and she went to John Jones, whom she thought was her friend, or closer to her friend, and begged him to help her.
As Johnny was distracting the scared and whimpering Melissa, Jason stepped behind her and put his arms around her neck in a tight chokehold.
I walked up behind her, put my hands on her shoulder.
From behind?
From behind, and I said, I'm not going to kill you even though I'm so pissed.
I could.
I'm so pissed I could kill you, but I'm not going to.
Okay. Then what did you do?
But I'm going to knock you out, and I slipped my arm and did a sleeper hold on her.
Okay.
That knocks a person out.
She's gasping for air. She's asking John, you know, please help me. I can't breathe. And what is John Jones's reaction to that? In a very flip, indifferent, absolutely callous manner, he says, well, if you couldn't breathe, you know, you couldn't ask for help.
Then he tightened the hold on her.
Like that.
When she reached out to me again, I said, you think I'd really help you, bitch?
Okay. You're really putting it to her. Is that correct?
Not at that point. It was just a nice, tight hold.
Okay, now what do you do?
I'm sitting there holding on. She reaches up, grabs my hair.
Okay.
I let go of the hold, pull it out of my hair.
And she gets some of your hair. Did you feel her pull your hair out?
Yes. By that time, I was mad
Does that
again.
inflame your temper? Really
Yes.
get you going? What are you saying now?
You're gonna wish you hadn't done that, bitch.
Okay, do what you did. Go ahead.
Totally tighten down, put all my strength
Okay,
behind
for
it.
how long do you do that?
15, 20 minutes.
At least. Do you agree?
Without
loosening up.
Okay.
Just leaving it hard. Then she went out.
Does she go limp?
Yeah, she went totally limp.
What's she doing? Is she gurgling? Is she breathing hard?
She wasn't doing anything
Is she
when
kicking?
she went out.
Okay, prior to going out.
Prior to going out, she's just sitting there, dragged back, and she went, let out with the air, and I didn't drop her. I lowered her to the ground like that and dropped her like that.
Jay turns his body and rotates her body to where she's lying face down on the ground. He tells me to get the machete, and I didn't want to find him at the time, so I did.
As Jason chanted prayers to Ariok, Johnny attempted to kill Melissa with the machete, but the blade was too dull.
So they then started choking her. They talked together during this process. It was a rather casual process. It wasn't a frantic killing, but they talked about how she would be a sacrifice to their god Ariok. At one point, while they were in between chokings, because this was apparently hard for them to accomplish this, she started to come to, and when she was coming to, Rose exclaimed, "Why are you resisting? Why don't you just die? This is a great honor for you to be a sacrifice to Ariok. You should be proud to be a sacrifice. You'll be going through the 7th gate."
I think one reason why she didn't struggle so much is I said, "You're a black witch. We're giving you the greatest honor to sit at the right hand of Ariok in hell as a sacrifice," and then she quit struggling.
Rose and Jones then took a homemade 8-foot spear, and the two boys placed it across Melissa's neck while they stood on either end to press the spear down. After 20 more minutes, they were sure Melissa had finally died.
Okay. I checked there and I go, "There's no pulse here. She's getting cold, John. What is your diagnosis?" "She's dead."
Okay.
I said, "The fucking bitch is dead. What are we gonna do?"
Jason said that he saw a purple mist come out of her mouth after he killed her. This was 11 o'clock at night, and how he saw a purple mist is beyond me, and it filled the whole valley. I mean, this is something he really believed. The Satanism part of it was a real part of this. He really did believe that.
While Johnny Jones claims Jason was the leader and he just a follower, Jason himself told investigators that Johnny was the driving force.
And I go, "Now what are we gonna do? I'm scared to death. You made me an accessory to the crime, thanks to fucking law. Okay. The only reason why I helped you is because of Ariok. Because I don't want to be punished for not helping you."
What was certain was that now they needed to cover up their crime.
They then decided that the proper way to deal with her body was to make this look like a sexual assault. So they ripped off her clothing and took off some of her clothing, and then they rolled her down the hillside a little bit into some brush, threw a tarp and some wood over the top of her, and left.
"She's dead now."
Okay.
Because I heard a bunch of things broke.
Do you remember him saying that?
Yes, I did.
What did you say?
I said, "I agree."
When I watched the videotape, the reenactment of the crime, the impression I got was that this was a joke, and that young lady's life was just nothing. Like this was a game.
Jason, as we were still in Eugene, Springfield area at the time, was reading the papers, and every time he ran across an article about Melissa, it was like he'd laugh and say, "They're never gonna catch us."
Johnny and Jason were not immune to the reach of the law. They left on a trip to Arizona, but within days, Melissa's body was discovered, and the boys were quickly arrested in Show Low. Their horrifying crime had caught up with them. But what made Jones and Rose into killers? Was it simply an evil streak? Was it a callous disregard for society's rules? Or was it a belief in the power of the occult?
Usually someone who's antisocial, who harms someone else in the way that Jason did, is getting pleasure out of the fact that they have the power to do it. It's a power trip. It's an ego trip.
John, without the skills and the strength that Jason had, also was an achiever, but he was going to achieve by hanging on to Jason.
We were offended by the lack of remorse of both of them. John, particularly because he had a real opportunity to at least say something. And his attorney said that he just was not the vocal type, and it was difficult for him to say anything, which is pretty ridiculous if you have a feeling of any sort about something. Jason, of course, showed no remorse. In fact, he just sort of smiled through his trials.
The definition of an antisocial personality, or one of them, is that you don't care about other people. You do what makes you feel good, even if it involves killing someone. That was Jason Rose.
I miss everything about Melissa. I miss having her there. I miss having her mature into a woman. I miss the opportunity of her being married and having children, of having grandchildren of hers. Miss her laugh. Miss having half of my family.
We didn't really want to at the point, but she was so far along that we just decided to put her out of her misery.
Okay. You agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you talk about putting her out of her misery?
No, we just did it.
Jason Rose and Johnny Jones were stopped after they committed their first human sacrifice. Rose is serving a life sentence, and Jones will be in prison a minimum of 25 years. How could two young men commit such a callous murder? By reinforcing each other's behavior, they did things they probably would never have done separately. They used occult beliefs as a way of defining their own identities, as a way of having ultimate power over the rest of society. And they ceased to see their actions in any rational sense. There were many signs along the way, the trappings of the occult, the animal sacrifices, but no one chose to see. Jason and Johnny had made themselves true outsiders who were transformed from boys to brutal monsters. I'm Teresa Saldana. Join me again next time for a unique look into the criminal mind on Confessions of Crime.